My name is Emily, and this is the story of how my life changed forever, not once, but twice. From a young age, I was enveloped in a loving family. My parents, David and Margaret, went above and beyond to provide a happy childhood for me in our small suburban town. My father was an engineer, and my mother was a teacher. They weren't wealthy in a material sense, but they were rich in love, and that made me feel like the luckiest girl in the world. Every evening, my parents would sit with me, eager to hear about my day. My mother, with her gentle smile, always encouraged me to chase my dreams, while my father would share inspiring stories from his reporting trips. We had peaceful evenings gathered in our cozy kitchen, the aroma of baking mingling with the sounds of our laughter. To me, that was the definition of happiness. But everything changed on a fateful rainy night when I was 16. It was a Friday, and my parents were driving home from a dinner party. I was at home with my grandmother, enjoying a pleasant dinner when the phone rang. That ringing wasn't just a sound, it was a harbinger of a terrible change that was about to occur. I'll never forget the chill that ran down my spine as I heard my grandmother's sobs from the living room, her hands trembling so much she could barely hold the phone. I watched her, a sense of dread creeping in. Her eyes were red as she looked at me, and her voice was so choked with emotion that I couldn't understand what she was saying to the person on the other end. All I knew was that from that moment on, my life would never be the same. The accident took my mother instantly. My father survived, but his suffering was immense. When I first saw him in the hospital, I could barely recognize him. He lay motionless in the bed, his legs crushed, his body covered in bruises and bandages. The strong man who used to carry me on his shoulders now looked like a shadow, weak and helpless. The sight made my heart ache as if all hope within me had been ripped away. My father looked at me, his eyes filled with tears, and tried to smile. But it wasn't his usual strong smile. It was a smile filled with pain and regret. He took my hand, his fingers trembling, and I could hear his voice crack. "I'm sorry, Emily, I'm so sorry." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "It's not your fault, Dad. You didn't do anything wrong." But deep down, I knew he blamed himself. He always felt guilty for not being able to protect Mom, and for not being able to give me the happy life we once had. The profound sadness in his eyes haunted me, and I knew that from that moment on I had not only lost my mother but also a part of my father. The strong, protective father who had always shielded me from life's storms. The following days were a long and painful ordeal. My father endured physical pain from his injuries while I faced the emotional agony of watching my beloved father suffer irreparable damage. I tried to be there for him every day, offering him even the smallest glimmer of hope, but sometimes I felt helpless. There were nights when I heard him crying softly, his voice choked with pain and helplessness. I knew he wasn't just hurting because of his lost legs, but also because of other invisible losses, the loss of faith, of hope, and of himself. My father always tried to be strong in front of me, but I could see the sadness hidden in his eyes, in his forced smiles. Every time he reached for a glass of water on the table and his trembling hands couldn't hold it, my heart ached. He used to be the strongest person I knew, the one who could do anything, and now he had to accept dependency, something he never imagined. It hurt him more than any physical wound. This loss wasn't just about losing my mother, it was also about losing the carefree nature of my life. From that moment on, I knew I had to be stronger, not just for myself, but also for my father, who had lost so much. But deep down, fear lingered. Would I be strong enough to face all the upcoming challenges? Would I be able to bring my father the joy he deserved? These were questions with no answers, and I could only keep moving forward, knowing the path ahead would be filled with trials and tribulations. After the accident, my father, David, despite being confined to a wheelchair, did his best to take care of me. He worked as an editor for a major city newspaper, striving to keep our lives stable. After graduating high school, I decided to attend college at the State University of New York, where I met my best friend Amanda. Amanda always made me feel warm and comfortable, and it was she who introduced me to Lucas, a person I never expected would become the greatest love of my life. When I first met Lucas, I didn't think he would leave a lasting impression. He was tall, with light brown hair and a friendly smile. We only chatted briefly then, but Lucas made me laugh with a funny story about how he once lost his shoes on a first date. "I guess you'll think I'm the clumsiest guy on earth," he chuckled, and I just shook my head, smiling along. We gradually became closer after several encounters through mutual friends. Lucas was unlike anyone I had ever known. He was not only funny, but also incredibly kind and always willing to listen. Once, while we were walking in the park, he asked me about my family, and I told him about my parents' accident. I felt my heart grow heavy as I recalled those painful memories, but Lucas didn't shy away or express pity. He just gently took my hand, looked into my eyes, and said, "I can't imagine how strong you've had to be, Emily. You're truly amazing." Lucas's words made me feel like I wasn't alone in my pain. He didn't try to comfort me with empty words, but offered understanding and empathy instead. In the encounters that followed, I found myself looking forward to the moments with him, eager to hear his warm voice and the humorous stories he brought. Lucas gradually became the light in my dark life. One autumn evening, after watching a movie together, we stopped by a small cafe. We sat by the window overlooking the street covered in golden leaves. Lucas suddenly spoke in a more serious tone. "Emily, I know you've been through a lot of loss, and I can't change the past for you. But I want to be with you, to rebuild the future with you. Do you feel the same?" I looked into his eyes and saw sincerity and love. My heart skipped a beat, and I could only nod, tears welling up with emotion. We fell in love in the simplest of moments. Lucas was undeterred when he learned about my father. The first time he met Dad, Lucas arrived with a bouquet of flowers and a bright smile. "I'm Lucas, Emily's friend," he introduced himself and immediately started conversing with my father about his favorite topics like music and books. My father, who had experienced a lot of social avoidance since the accident, was captivated by Lucas's friendliness and sincerity. It was the first time in years that I saw my father truly smile, a smile devoid of sadness or pain. After that meeting, Dad told me, "Lucas is a good man, Emily. You deserve someone like him." His words moved me to tears. My father's acceptance was the most important thing to me, and his fondness for Lucas deepened my love for him even more. Lucas always made me feel safe and at peace. He not only loved me but also respected and cared for my father as if he were his own family. Whenever he visited, Lucas always brought some food or a new book for Dad. He didn't hesitate to help me take Dad out for walks, unfazed by the curious stares of others. To him, my father wasn't a burden but an integral part of my life, and now his as well. I loved Lucas for these simple things. He made me feel like I wasn't just someone trying to survive after a loss, but someone worthy of love and care. He made me feel that no matter how harsh life got, I could still find happiness in small, everyday moments, in the sincere eyes and warm embrace of the one I loved. Lucas and I got married after 4 years of dating. We moved in with my father to make it easier to care for him. Our wedding was a cozy affair, but soon after I faced a major challenge from my in-laws. My mother-in-law, Patricia, and Lucas's sister, Olivia, had taken a dislike to me from the very first meeting. Patricia often showed disdain for my father and made snide remarks about my family not being good enough. Every time Patricia visited, she would cast a scrutinizing gaze around our house as if dissatisfied with everything. She frequently brought up things that hurt me, like the fact that my father was in a wheelchair and couldn't do much. Once, when my father was trying to reach a book on a shelf, Patricia said with contempt, "How inconvenient, Emily. Someone like him should be in a nursing home. It would be more convenient for everyone." I felt my blood rush to my face but tried to stay calm to avoid an argument in front of my father. Olivia, Lucas's sister, was no less scathing. She often used innuendo to criticize me. Once, while we were having dinner together, Olivia casually remarked, "Lucas truly has a heart of gold. Not everyone is willing to accept a family with such a burden." I was speechless at her malice, feeling like I could never please them no matter how hard I tried. Whenever Lucas was away for work, Patricia and Olivia became even more overbearing. They would come to the house unannounced, rummage through our belongings, and even once change the furniture arrangement without my permission. One time I found Patricia moving my father's chair out of the living room. When I asked her what she was doing, she coldly replied, "This room is not a place for useless things. You should consider putting him in a nursing home. It would be more comfortable for you and Lucas." Her words cut me like a knife, but I didn't know what to do except endure patiently. Patricia and Olivia always tried to drive a wedge between Lucas and me. They told him I wasn't good enough for him, that my father and I were just burdens. Once I overheard a conversation between Patricia and Lucas on the phone. She said, "Son, you can do better than this. Emily is nothing special, and her family only brings trouble. Aren't you tired of it?" My heart shattered when I heard those words, but Lucas replied, "Mom, I love Emily and I accept her family. If you can't accept that, maybe you should interfere less in our lives. Although Lucas's words warmed my heart, the tension between me and my in-laws continued to escalate. Whenever Lucas was around, Patricia and Olivia would try to act kind, but when it was just me and my father, they became cold and harsh. I always felt caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace so Lucas wouldn't feel pressured from both sides. But as the days passed, I increasingly felt like a stranger in my own home, where the love and peace that once existed were now replaced by tension and anxiety. After a while, Lucas suggested we buy a new house with more space for my father to move around. We found a house with a beautiful garden and decided to move in. I thought life would be more peaceful, but I was wrong. During the housewarming party, Patricia continued her scrutiny, her eyes as if trying to find flaws in the new house. While everyone was gathered in the garden, she approached me, her voice soft but laced with sarcasm. "Emily, don't you think your father should be in a nursing home? This house is really too big and nice for someone like him. If your father goes to a nursing home, I can move in here to help you and Lucas." I felt numb, unable to believe what she had just said. Lucas was standing nearby and heard everything. He immediately stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "Mom, do you understand what you're saying? This is our house, and Emily's father is a part of this family. You have no right to decide who should live where." Patricia frowned and replied coldly, "Lucas, I just want what's best for you. Don't you find him bothersome? You and Emily would live more comfortably without him. I'm thinking about your happiness." Lucas held my hand tightly, his voice firm. "Mom, you can think whatever you want, but I love Emily, and I accept her father as part of our family. I don't want to hear another word about putting him in a nursing home. If you can't respect our decision, then I hope you won't interfere in our lives anymore." The atmosphere became tenser than ever. Olivia stood nearby, smirking as if enjoying the argument. She chimed in, "Lucas, I think you're overreacting. Mom just wants to help you." I couldn't take it anymore. Tears welled up in my eyes. I turned to Lucas, my voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Lucas. I don't want you to be in the middle like this. I know it's not easy for you." Lucas looked at me, his eyes softening. He hugged me and whispered, "Emily, it's not your fault. I'll always be on your side. We're a family, and I won't let anyone hurt you or your father." After that argument, Patricia and Olivia left, leaving a heavy atmosphere behind. That night, when it was just Lucas and me, we sat together in the living room. Lucas took my hand, his voice gentle. "I know you've endured a lot because of Mom and Olivia. I'm so sorry you have to go through that. But I want you to know that no one can change our decision. Your father will always be here, and I'll always be by your side." I understood that he always wanted the best for me, and no matter what happened, Lucas would be there to protect me and my father. Tears welled up as I hugged Lucas. To have a better life. Lucas became increasingly busy with work, seemingly missing many moments we used to have. I understood that it was because he wanted to ensure a stable future for our small family, but gradually I felt the distance between us growing. Sometimes I wondered if we could go back to the happy days when life was simpler with just lazy evenings together. But I never expected a terrible event would change everything. Then one day I received the call that no one wants to receive. The call from the hospital informed me that Lucas had been in a serious traffic accident and didn't make it. At that moment, everything seemed to stand still. The world around me fell silent, leaving only the sound of my heart pounding, as if it wanted to tear through my chest. I couldn't believe my ears. Lucas, the one I loved the most, the life partner I thought would be with me forever, was gone forever. The pain tore at my heart, as if a part of me had disappeared with him. The following days passed like a hazy fog. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I could only sit in the corner of the room, recalling every memory of Lucas, every smile, every loving gaze. Before I could even begin to heal, before I could face this unbearable loss, Patricia, Lucas's mother, and Olivia, his sister, appeared. They didn't bring words of comfort, nor did they offer any sympathy for the pain I was going through. On the contrary, they were cold, almost indifferent when mentioning Lucas's assets. They declared that the house where Lucas and I had lived, the place filled with our memories, was actually Lucas's property, and they wanted me to move out immediately. I couldn't believe those words. It was like a knife stabbing deep into my already bleeding heart. Patricia said this house belongs to Lucas, and now, by law, it must belong to our family. Olivia also stood beside her, her eyes looking at me with indifference. You have no right to be here anymore. Emily, she said, as if I were just a stranger with no value. All they cared about were the assets, the material things Lucas left behind. They didn't think about the pain I was enduring, didn't care about the immense loss I was facing. I felt betrayed by the very family I had trusted and loved. The following days were a series of tense confrontations with Patricia and Olivia. They kept pressuring me, constantly reminding me that I no longer belonged here. Every time I looked around the house, I remembered Lucas, remembered the days we built this home together, every little detail bearing his mark. But now, I was forced to leave it all behind, forced to give up the place I always considered home, just because of the greed and indifference of those who should have been my family. The pain of losing Lucas was already immense, but the cruelty of Patricia and Olivia further drained me. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice with no hope to cling to. Life, which had already lost its meaning, became even emptier and darker than ever. On the day of Lucas's funeral, Patricia and Olivia didn't even bother to come. It was a day when I thought there would be some love, some unity from the family to remember the deceased. But they weren't there, not a word of sharing, not a comforting hug. They didn't seem to want to waste time on my loss. When the funeral ended, my father and I returned home in exhaustion, emptiness, and unspeakable pain. But when I opened the door to the house that Lucas and I had once called home, an unexpected sight unfolded before my eyes. Patricia and Olivia were there, rummaging through and packing our belongings. The meaningful items, every memento of Lucas and me, were now being thrown away without mercy, as if they were just worthless trifles. Patricia looked at me with cold eyes and declared, "We are Lucas's family, this house belongs to us." Her voice was devoid of any emotion, as if I didn't even exist in their world. I couldn't take it anymore. The pain of losing Lucas, coupled with the cruelty of his mother and sister, caused me to explode. I stood before them, my voice trembling with anger. "This is mine, Lucas's house. You have no right to do this. Leave my house immediately." But Patricia didn't back down. She stood tall, even sneering. "Emily, you're just an outsider. We are Lucas's real family. You have no right to be here." Trembling, I opened the last letter Lucas left. Each line cut into my heart. He wrote about our sweet memories, about the small house he always dreamed of cherishing with me until we were old and gray. His writing was still warm and loving as ever. Only this time it was filled with sadness and helplessness in the face of fate. At the end of the letter, he told me to be strong and continue living my life. He had made a will leaving all his assets to me and my father, including the small house, the rose garden he planted with his own hands, and the car he often used to take me for rides every afternoon. He knew I loved the pearl necklace he gave me for my birthday, so he carefully kept it in the bedside table drawer, along with a loving message. But most surprisingly, Lucas also revealed a secret he had kept for so long. He had secretly purchased a large life insurance policy, with me as the sole beneficiary. He worried that if something happened to him, I wouldn't be able to afford to live. So he quietly prepared everything for my safety. Each line, each message from him was like needles piercing my heart, making the pain of loss even more profound. Holding the letter to my chest, my tears flowed like rain. I had to gather all my courage to face Patricia and Olivia, who were vigorously demanding inheritance rights. They believed they were Lucas's only relatives and therefore entitled to all his possessions. With Lucas's letter, I knew he had entrusted everything to me. His loving words in the letter were the only source of strength for me to stand firm amidst this storm. Lucas wanted me to continue living, to protect the house we built together. I couldn't let Patricia and Olivia destroy that. I said resolutely, "Lucas left everything to me and my father. This is his will, and this is the life insurance policy he bought for me. You have no right to be here." Patricia and Olivia seemed stunned when I mentioned the insurance. Their faces changed, and their greed and envy became even more apparent. Patricia yelled, "You're lying. Lucas would never do that. What tricks did you use to steal his assets?" Olivia chimed in, "That's right. You must have seduced him, forced him to do what you wanted. We won't let you get away with this." After a fierce argument, I had no other choice. I called the police to resolve the situation. When the police arrived, they asked Patricia and Olivia to leave. They were forced to comply, but before leaving, Patricia didn't forget to throw a threat. "Do you think this is over, Emily? We'll be back. You'll pay for this." Patricia's words were like a thunderclap, sending shivers down my spine. I knew this fight wasn't over, and I would face many storms ahead, but I wouldn't back down. For Lucas, for our love, I would fight to the end. The door closed behind them, but Patricia's threat still echoed in the quiet space. I felt like I had just escaped a nightmare, but I also knew this wasn't the end. Regardless, I wouldn't let them take what Lucas had left behind. I would protect this house, protect our memories, no matter how many challenges I had to face. A few weeks after Lucas passed away, I unexpectedly discovered I was pregnant. This news came to me like a ray of light amidst the dark and painful days, like a miracle Lucas had left for me. It was not just a new life, but also a great hope. A new beginning in a life already filled with challenges. This child was the crystallization of our love, the last gift Lucas left, a part of him still alive within me. When I looked at Lucas's picture, I felt like he was still here, holding my hand and facing the days ahead with me. When Patricia, Lucas's mother, learned that I was pregnant, she couldn't hide her anger and suspicion. She called me promiscuous, accusing me of betraying Lucas and using this child as a way to keep the house. Her harsh words were like daggers to my heart, but I didn't allow myself to be weak or let those words hurt me. I knew that only I understood the love that Lucas and I shared, and this child was proof of that love. Without explanation, without argument, I chose to remain silent and focus on the most important thing now, protecting the little life growing inside me every day. It was all that Lucas had left me, and I would protect this child with all my love and strength, no matter what challenges I had to face. With the help of a lawyer, after many tense court sessions, I won and kept the house, the place filled with the most beautiful memories of Lucas and me. When the court ruled in my favor, I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I had fought not only for my own rights, but also to protect Lucas's dream, the dream of a home filled with love and happiness. My father, who always silently stood by me during the most difficult times, started a new life with me. Together, we took care of the garden that Lucas had dreamed would be filled with colorful flowers, symbolizing hope and love. Every day, my father and I spent hours in the garden, planting each flower bush, caring for each branch, as if Lucas was still there, guiding and encouraging us. Every time I saw a flower bloom, I remembered Lucas and the dreams we shared. We were waiting for the day my and Lucas's child would be born, and I believed that no matter how difficult it was, I would overcome it all. The strength and love that Lucas had given me were still there, and I knew he would always be watching over me, giving me the motivation to move forward. No one could take away the love Lucas left in me, and nothing could dim the memory of him. I would live, I would love, and I would raise our child with all the love I had to continue the dream Lucas left me.